Hello everyone, and welcome to the 28th and potentially the final episode of the Chess This Week. Starting off this episode with, of course, the main event of this year and the main event of this month in April, the World Championship match between Ding Liren and Jan Nepomniachtchi. The first game began with Jan Nepomniachtchi having the white pieces and it ended in a draw, although Jan was having the upper hand for most part of this game. Now, Ding Liren playing the first ever World Championship match. Jan has experience having played the previous one against Magnus Carlsen, the reigning world champion for I guess a few more weeks. And Ding actually said that he actually didn't prepare anything yesterday because he's still struggling with his feelings, his emotions, and he completely forgot the opening during the game, which happens a lot to even the very best of chess players these days because the information has completely blown off the charts. Ding Liren also mentioned that he feels a bit depressed during the first part of the game. He wasn't thinking about chess so much and he was indeed spending a lot of time in the restroom, which has also been a topic of contention if there should be cameras out there or if the player should be left alone in peace. What are your thoughts on that? Do leave it in the comments below. And he mentioned that he felt there was something a little wrong with his mind, probably the pressure of the match. A very, very understandable feeling being in this stage for the first time ever. So even for someone who's been at the number 2 and having played so many chess tournaments, the stage can become quite daunting. So the World Championship match has kicked off and the first game has ended in a draw. This is going to go for this entire month and it takes place in Astana in Kazakhstan. Now moving forward towards the second biggest event, which is much smaller in terms of magnitude, at least as of today, the Champions Chess Tour, the Chessable Masters. Now this again consisted of 3 divisions and there was no surprises in the winner of this edition of the Champions Chess Tour. This was won by Hikaru Nakamura. Although he was still upset, I'm going to use the word, although Fabiano Caruana is probably one of the best chess players of all time. But nevertheless, in this format, I think Hikaru is a big favorite and Fabi did manage to defeat Hikaru in the winners final, which led to a matchup between Hikaru and Magnus in the losers final, the losers bracket, after Magnus was upset by Russian Grandmaster Vladislav Artemiev. Now this came down to a super thrilling match. The losers final was, in my opinion, like the actual final itself, and it took a mouse slip from Magnus Carlsen for Hikaru to prevail as the winner of this one. This went down the wire. And at one point, Magnus had 25 seconds, Hikaru had something like 13 seconds, which is a lot of time for these players. But nevertheless, the position was about equal. And if it was the opposite, Hikaru would have probably flagged anyone in the world. But Magnus, potentially with not as much online experience, he let that moment slip. He made a mouse slip and that was a thriller of a match. And then Hikaru came out the next day to defeat Fabiano twice. He had to do that because he had lost one of the matches, so he had to win in the winners final once and then go on to win in the grand final, which he did in emphatic style in an Armageddon. Despite having a few hiccups, a few nervous moments, as they say, if Magnus doesn't win, then Hikaru wins. I think this has been the story of almost any online speeches tournament that I have witnessed. So this was the story of Division 1. Now Division 2 was also incredibly strong, having players like Anish Giri, Arjun Erigaisi and Maxime Vachier-Lagrave, former world champion Vladimir Kramnik, and of course the eventual winner, Nodirbek Abdusattorov, who has been having a fabulous year. Abdusattorov faced a very tough opposition, starting with Anish Giri, whom he defeated. Was a 4-game match, but Nodirbek won 2.5 halves. And then he went on to defeat Arjun Erigaisi in a thrilling 4-game match. It was 1.5. Arjun was winning in the decisive game. He had more time, but Arjun let that win slip and Nodirbek turned it around beautifully to win that 1.5. A 3-2 win against Denis Lazovic, and then he went on to defeat Maxime Vachier-Lagrave 3-0 in the winners final. And Maxime managed to get back, but he lost once again to Nodebek in the grand final. This was the story of the Division 2. Some amazing play by Nodebek. And in the Division 3, which was again not all that weak, it boasted the likes of Gukesh, but this one was won by MGD1's Amin Tabatabai. Amin plays for MGD1 in the Pro Chess League, and he didn't make any wrong moves in this tournament. He won all his matches. He got into the winners final and he won that against Shamsuddin Okiro. And then in the grand finals, he defeated Levito Chess Wizards Alexei Sarana. And this is also the quarterfinal matchup between MGD1 and Levito Chess Wizards in the knockouts. So let's see how that turns up. And moving on, what makes Abdusaturu's Division 2 win more special is the fact that he played 2 tournaments parallelly. He was playing in the Champion Chess Tour online, and he was also playing over the board in the Armageddon series, the Asia Oceania group in Berlin. Now this was a tournament consisting of 8 players, 7 invited players and Karthikeyan Murli, who won the online qualifiers and got in, and this was won by the other spectacular junior this year, D. Gukesh. Abdusaturu went all the way till the grand final after losing earlier against Gukesh. He went into the losers bracket and managed to flag his way to defeat the legend, the former world champion Vladimir Kramnik. Gukesh had earlier done the same against Kramnik to win in the winners final, and this set up another clash between Gukesh and Abdusaturu, and the Olympiad memories were rekindled. But this time Gukesh managed to make sure that he got his revenge despite losing one of the sets. He won their first matchup in the winners bracket. He lost the second one and he managed to win the third one in a very convincing way to win the Armageddon Asia Oceania group and go into the main event in September. Both Gukesh and Abdusaturu qualify for this. This tournament also featured Vidit and Karthikeyan Murli, who got tag teamed by Parham Maqsoodlu and Nodebek. Both of them lost once against both these opponents, so they got eliminated with just one win. Now those are the big 3 tournaments in this week. Moving on to some of the lesser models, the open events. There are a few opens going on in Spain right now. The first one on the list is the La Nucia Open, where the Israeli Grandmaster Evgeny Postny is leading at the end of 7 rounds. Now Leon Mendonca is also featuring in this event, and after his 9 out of 9 performance, the 6 out of 7 looks a bit modest, but it's still a pretty decent performance. And we have 2 more rounds to go here. And if we just go a little bit further in Spain, then there is the La Roda Open going on. And at the end of 8 rounds, the first place is shared between the Brazilian Grandmaster Alexander Fier and our own Arvind Chidambaram. But this features a lot of top Indian Grandmasters. We have V. Pranav, SL Narayanan, P. Indian, just half point behind these 2 leading, and the last round is expected to be quite interesting. Moving to a completely different continent, the St. Louis tournament is having the Spring Classic, and this features some of the top American junior grandmasters. And at the end of 3 rounds, the lead is shared by a lot of people: Sam Sevian, Christopher Yu, and Sviash Darius and Vizana. And we also have Abhimanyu Mishra, one of the youngest grandmasters in the world, not the youngest, playing in this event as well. And moving to a completely different continent and probably featuring this continent for the first time in chess this week, there's a tournament going on in Nairobi, Kenya. And here as well, at the end of 7 rounds, it's actually Grandmaster Timur Kariev who is in the lead with 6.5 points, and with just 2 more rounds to go, he remains a big favorite to win this event. Probably this was not that well known, but features a very good prize fund, with the first prize being, I'm not entirely sure, but $7,500, and it's just the first prize. The total prize fund is somewhere between $40,000 to $50,000. The prize fund being so attractive that a man in the Kenya Chess Open was caught playing in the women's section in disguise. And for context, the Kenya shillings 500,000, $500,000 is the first prize for this tournament, and this is twice the amount of average gross annual income in Kenya. So this is like the first time I've heard such a thing happen. Now, those are the events currently underway. In tournaments which have just recently concluded in the previous week, we go all the way to Scandinavia, where in the Fagners Open in Norway, this was won by the Turkish Grandmaster Stanel Wahab. Abhimanyu Puranik played fabulously well, but was unlucky to miss out on the first prize, finishing second on the tiebreak. Now, the special thing about this tournament was the performance of the young girls, Vantika and Savita. Vantika played excellently, upsetting quite a few grandmasters in the first few rounds, although she lost a bit of steam in the end. But nevertheless, she performed quite decently with 5 points out of 9. And Savita Shri managed to complete her third WGM norm, thereby completing the requirements for her Women Grandmaster title and also making her maiden International Master norm in the process. Sethuraman finished in the 5th place. And in the Reykjavik Open in Iceland, this was won by the Swedish Grandmaster Brandelius Needs, and just half point behind there were a group of players, including the Mr. Commonwealth Abhijit Gupta. Also note that this was played by the legend Vasil Ivanchuk, who scored 6.5 points, a modest tournament for his standards, but it was a pretty strong tournament. And V Pranav also finished with 6 out of 9. Siddhant Mohapatra made his first GM norm in this event. And moving on to the Indian events, the Mayor's Cup in Indoor was known. That's not quite surprising, but nevertheless, even in the absence of major grandmasters from India, this was dominated by two international masters, Nitish Belurkar and Vianney Antonio. They both scored 8.5 points, but Nitish just edging away Vianney in the tiebreaks. The Polish Grandmaster Krasenko, who is quite experienced and well known, finished a whole point behind along with a group of players. And in the ICA tournament, which is a rapid event, a one-day event held in Bangalore, this attracted quite a few grandmasters, and this was won by the young grandmaster Bharat Subramaniam and the 20-year-old Akash Darvi, who seems to be featuring quite a lot in the chess this week. He finished in the 2nd place. Arjun Kalyan finished 3rd. A quite strong tournament. A lot of grandmasters, Grandmaster Stani finishing in the 8th place, and Deeptan Ghosh finishing in the 11th place. Now, a typical Indian Open event. That's this episode of the Chess This Week. If you like this episode, then do hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and see you all soon.